You're tuned into the Writing Community Chat Show, the live streaming YouTube podcast that brings you the stories of authors, screenwriters, and more. Indie or established, this show's for the community, and we invite you to be a part of it. Head to the writingcommunitychatshow.com for more info. The WCCS. Together as one, we get it done.
Hello and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. Hello everybody and welcome back to the Writing Community Chat Show. We've got a great guest. We've got two great guests for you tonight and an incredible story that we can't wait to dig into, and I'm really looking forward to it. How's your week been, Chris? How are you doing?
Yeah, it's been good. I've been looking at all the little socials that you've been doing, and you took on the voice of Mr. Geen for our entertainment. That was fun.
Yes, I did. It seems to be a bit of a trend, and everyone is jumping on it. And it is purely based on how much I really adored that series, as dark and disturbing as it was. I think Charlie Hunnam has been absolutely stellar in that series. And, you know, of all the acting he's done, I think that is up there with his best.
Yeah, started off in the humble Biker Grove.
He did, yeah.
Yeah, so, but yeah, I love what you're doing with the side show that you're doing. God knows how you watch that much TV, mate, but you are getting through the reviews, and yeah, giving some good recommendations as well. So,
well, that comes from a lot of memory as well, and current uptake, which has increased since I started doing the reviews. So, you know, and you'll notice a lot of my series recommendations are a lot of ex-military or military kind of shows, especially with Navy SEALs in them, which is absolutely fantastic with tonight's guest and the Breaches Playbook, which you can see above Chris's head, because that is all inspired by the stories of said guests tonight. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and obviously we talk about mental health and resilience and all that good stuff. And you need both in the writing world. It's a difficult business to be in at times. So, you know, hopefully we can pick tonight's guests' brains and get some really good tips as well as some brilliant stories as well.
Yeah. Have you done much writing this week?
I've done sod all writing this week. I've been reading spooky season. So I've been reading a few horror novels and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm classing that as my homework. Maybe I'll write something. I'm thinking last week's guest, they said that the publishing world is after sort of books that are a little bit shorter, and I'd love to do like a Goosebumps style with people from the writing community contributing and doing little novels that scare the socks off people. So that might be cool.
Yeah. Well, I do agree that, you know, taking that break, getting your mind working again, and especially reading is really helpful for the process. So I wouldn't say you've done not a lot. I think that is productive. Anya in the chat says, hello to you. No writing here either. Grading tons of stuff. Yeah, lots of teaching work there for you. Again, which is quite a distraction. But we've got two guests on tonight who are, you know, in the creative world, one of which who's written 10 books. So we're going to get some advice on that as well. But we know writing and life is quite a difficult thing to juggle, but it is very possible. And we've, you know, over 360 interviews proves that with guests who have done very good jobs. So, yeah. Are you ready for tonight's guest, Chris?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting them on and having a good chat about all things writing and mental health and some good stories and stuff as well.
Yes. So hello to you all in the chat. And if you're watching this, thank you for watching live. If you are, please hit the like button. If you're watching it back, thank you. And please do leave some comments. And if you have anything follow-up wise, you're more than welcome to message us or find us on social media. And but importantly, if you are watching live, get involved in the comments in the chat tonight. So we are thrilled to be talking about a novel that has literally been forged in fire on the football field and in the heart of the action world. Tonight we have the authors of the explosive new thriller, The Breaches Playbook, a Declan Novak novel, the first in a planned 3-book series. First, we welcome James Pomerantz, a seasoned author, novelist, and entrepreneur who brings the professional literary craft refined by years in the intense world of Chicago nightlife and unique partnerships. And joining him is Tom Hruby, a man whose life story is frankly astonishing. Tom is a decorated Navy SEAL breacher who served 4 deployments, an undefeated MMA fighter, and yes, a man who walked onto the Northwestern Big Ten football team at the age of 32. Together, they've written a book that showcases a modern warrior's life, real experiences, and proves that not all battles are in war zones. Tom and James, please give me a big helping hand in welcoming them to the show. My goodness, can't speak. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi.
thanks for having us.
You're very welcome. How are you guys doing? James, start with you. How are you doing? How's your week been?
It's good. I'm here in Arizona, so the weather has finally cooled off, and I'm lucky to be here.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you. And Tom?
Hey, thanks. I'm near Chicago in Crown Point, Indiana, and same. The weather has cooled off, and life is great. Thanks for having us.
You're very welcome. What are you guys like? Do you like the hot weather, or do you prefer the winter time and the seasons? What do you prefer?
I like the hot weather until I don't like the hot weather anymore. And then I like the cold weather until I don't like it anymore.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Well, we have a great set of 4 seasons here still. So it's none of these seasons last all that long before we can look forward to the next one.
Mm. Well, they do last long here.
The summer in Scottsdale is brutally long. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
But
Amazing.
It's over now, so good. I survived another one.
Well, what we normally do on the show is we dig into the past of our guests and, their writing journey, how they got into it, which we can kind of touch on. But what I'm really interested to know, based on both of your backgrounds and your experiences and kind of the amazing lives you both lived, is how that connection between the two of you happened.
Well, I'll start, I guess. I was working on a novel in 2014, living north of Chicago in a suburb called Winnetka. And I owned a business near Northwestern University. And I was friends with their head football coach, Pat Fitzgerald. And the novel I was working on was about an older college football player. And I asked Pat if I could attend summer training camp. And he was awesome, said, yeah, come on up, shadow me for a couple days. And then when we got up there, it was August of 2014. He said, you should talk to Tom Hruby. And I knew who Tom Hruby was because everybody in Evanston knew that there was an active duty Navy SEAL playing for the football team. And I was like, oh, hell yeah, So he introduced us, and, we just kind of started talking from there. And, after getting to know him a little bit, I said, the story I'm working on is interesting, but your life is 10 times more interesting. So it took a while, but we finally agreed to collaborate and work on a novel where the protagonist was based on a lot of Tom's experiences.
Yeah, which I think is amazing. Tom, how did you kind of react to that? Not the meetup, but the suggestion that there should be a story about kind of your experiences.
At first, I was real resistant, and so I contributed to a couple of projects, to include the one he was working on at the time. That that's kind of was his lead in to the relationship, and so we worked on that project for a little while. Eventually, we decided that we would start looking into a biography. So we worked on that project for a bit. But both of us had a much bigger interest in writing fiction and creating a fiction novel, story, and series. So it seemed like a very reasonable, logical, and exciting step to just take the biographical story and adapt it to this really fun, thrilling, fiction story that ultimately could go on, and as long as people keep buying the books, we could keep writing this story, and this character can go on for a very long time. So I had essentially made the decision that rather than write the biographical story, which you get one book out of that, and maybe we should have done that, who knows, right? But but the alternative is we created this character, and we took these experiences and all of this knowledge and skill sets, and we get to tell this fantastic and take readers on a really fantastic journey. So I think that's kind of what was attractive to me. And at that time, I was transitioning out of the Navy. I was still an active duty full-time SEAL instructor. I was a full-time student at Northwestern. I was playing football. I had a family. I had 3 kids at the time. So I had a couple of things going on in my life that made the idea of writing a book at that time. And it was my first book, but I'd always been a voracious reader, even as a little kid. And so I had always imagined writing at some point in time. That didn't seem like the right time. And it wasn't. It still took us some time. But I attribute James really had a vision of what the story could look like. And he stuck with that project and that vision for a long time. He was just wildly persistent, and in a way that was great and respectful. I mean, I enjoyed kind of developing a friendship with him over a course of years, where we might not talk to each other but a few times over the year. But we kept in touch, and I think once the time was right and I had settled down and we got to a position where it made sense for me, the first thing I did was call James up and say, "Hey, are you ready? Let's get this project back on the books." And he was ready to go, and that was it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think there's still room. You can probably do the biography and keep the series going, or a later project for that as well. So yeah, keep that in mind. I think that would still be a great read. James, going back to the sort of starting process for you, where did writing become a part of your life, and at what point did you decide your experiences and the imagination is the point for you to pick the pen up?
Well, I went to college for journalism originally. Right out of high school, I wanted to be a sports writer. I always thought I could write. In high school, I was just a student that didn't pay a lot of attention. I thought I was talented, but I didn't work hard at it. I went to school for a while and then ended up attending Bard College, and sort of figured, well, this is a good way to make a living. You get to sleep late, you meet girls, and there's drinks around. So I'm like, this could be a good career. Bad move, but anyway, I ended up in the nightclub bar business in Chicago, and I ended up partners with the Newman Haas racing team in one venture, Mario Andretti's team. And then I was partners with Steven Seagal in another restaurant. And I going through these experiences, I was like, oh my God, I got to write about this shit. I mean, it's wild. So I wrote my first novel in '99 and have been writing ever since.
Yeah. I can only imagine the amount of stories you must have tucked away from those experiences.
Well, yeah, there's a few.
Yeah.
I went to a bull riding school at 45 years old. So that was another book, but it was fun.
Yeah, that's amazing. And Tom, obviously, the Navy SEALs is a massively sort of attractive thing for the media, for fiction across the world. how much compared to your real experiences and what you've put in the book, how much of it is sort of true to the experiences you had, and how much of it is sort of leaning more towards the fiction side?
I don't know how I could put a percentage on what's true to life. There are let's say out of a dozen stories, 8 of them are probably pretty true to life. But that's the beauty, I guess, of a fiction story and storyline. We have the ability to piece the story together virtually any way that we wanted to put it together. I think that a great way to look at how I think I approached this project was, of course, there are certain sensitivities that have to be considered. So that was always in the back of my mind, and it was very important that I considered all of those possibilities. But what I really felt like was, having experienced all of these places, events, I could understand and feel what it would be like to be in that scenario, which allows for almost every situation, every piece of dialogue, every co-character to be, in my opinion, when I look at the stories and I read them, they are so wildly authentic. So nobody in that story is made up. These are authentic, genuine, situations where this is exactly how a Navy SEAL would act in this situation. For example, like, I didn't go to the FBI, but Declan becomes an FBI agent, and he is tasked. He becomes a member of the Violent Crimes Against Children in Chicago. Now, we have friends that are FBI agents, so of course we interview them, talk to them. But there's a big section of the book, and that's a little bit about what the Breacher's Playbook, I thought, was intended, was to give our readers an upfront access to some of these worlds that they would never have ever been able to see. And so we show from the inside out, and it's not in a documentary way, it's not in a biographical way, right? We created a fiction story, a suspenseful, thrilling story that also is fully authentic, to include James. We were invited to Quantico, Virginia, to tour the FBI Academy. And so James spent hours touring it with a SEAL friend of mine who runs Hogan's Alley, which is a portion of FBI Training Academy. So even situations where I wasn't particularly there, we had access, and we gained access, so that, it's just so wildly detailed and authentic in the book that, that's the reality of the book, is that we've created stories that you could never get anywhere else.
Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah, Tom, I'm really interested, because obviously going into the SEALs, obviously you're very much in control. MMA, not losing any fights in that as well. It's all on you. You're very much in control again, like with your training and your approach. And the same with football to a certain extent. Again, a lot of it relies on you. But with reading and writing, as soon as that book goes out into the world, you've kind of lost control of it then. So what were your fears going into it, and how did you sort of manage those?
Well, it took us 10 years to write this project, so and to put it out into the world. So I guess it's a terrifying thing. I'd imagine anyone that has written a biography, I suppose, if just to put your writing and your style and your thoughts and your structure all out there for the world to view, and it's a horrifying thing. So for my first published book, for it to be a somewhat historical fiction about my life, and to include my writing, and to include our ability to turn it into a tantalizing story it's a very scary thing. But it's like, gosh, you realize that once it's out there, it's done, right?
Yeah.
It's just, you gotta push send at some point, and let the chips lie where they will, and that was just another opportunity to experience that kind of a thing. Like, it's like you, Chris, you brought up fighting in a cage. There's a chapter in the book that details my very first fight, the process of walking into a mixed martial arts gym. That, we're talking like, it's not like the UFC kind of franchise type gym that you see, one where it's just old dirty mats and pads, and these guys are in there because they want to be professional fighters. And to walk into that gym, at some point you just got to open the door and go in. I could sit outside all day long. Reasons why I'm going to back my car out of the parking spot. But at some point you got to walk out your car and get into that and walk into that gym. And so that I detail that, we detail in the book, the whole process of walking into the arena and weighing in and being checked by the doctors and sitting in the stairwell outside of the octagon, listening to the match before. And I talk about how the fight right before me ends in like 32 seconds, and you're just thinking, maybe I'll have about 8 more minutes before I've got to go in there. And then you hear, KO in 32 seconds. Hey, Tom, you're up. And you go, oh shit, this is real. This is going to happen today. And so those are moments where you just, I guess you just got to push send and let it go. So, and I guess you understand that there's sometimes you concern that the context, you didn't get all the context right. And how do you go back and re-explain some situations and stories, and you might not get an opportunity to do that. It's out there now.
I think what you're talking about there is determination, and obviously a lot of other things. And one of your teammates said it. The book is all about determination. So going through being a Navy SEAL, MMA fighting, going onto the rugby field, and even writing the book, what's kind of the biggest lesson about determination that do you think you've had?
I think about how I really think about how where it began that I became convinced I wanted to play football at the highest level that I could.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back and be a college football player. So I've already done deployments. I saw the world. I saw war. I saw what was happening. And the wars were kind of closing down, and we didn't have as much stuff to do. And I'm watching college football. And I said, I think I might be able to go do that. Maybe when I get back, that'll be the next thing I'll try out. And then over a period of weeks, months time, I convinced myself that is where I'm going and that is what I'm doing. It was a matter of deciding that that's what will happen, and that's the matter of determination. And once I have that certainty, this is what I'm doing, this is where I'm going. It doesn't mean it will always happen that way, right? But now I have set the path, and it just begins to kind of, the path almost just reveals itself, it is there waiting for me to make the decision. I'm doing this. All right. So the book takes Declan through, I think 5 or 6 maybe phases of his life where these are the decisions that he has to make. And the cool part about, I think, the story is that, these circumstances, these life circumstances occur outside of Declan, right? That force him to make a decision about how am I going to make a difference in these particular people's lives? And I'm going to have to decide where I want to go, what I need to do to get there. And then Declan just says, if I'm going to make a difference in this young girl's life or these kids' lives or the people in my family's lives, I got to do it. This is the path that I have to take. And it's, the path reveals itself, I suppose, once you make that decision. So determination, in my estimation, is take the time, figure out who you are, what you want, where you want to go, and be absolutely certain about it.
Yeah. I just can imagine you saying to people, I want to go play college football, NFL or whatever that specifically was. And probably a lot of your friends or family might have been saying, are you sure that's the right thing to do?
That's the story of my life.
Yeah.
Well, Tom eventually went to the Chicago Bears camp after college. So
yeah, obviously great decision, but it's just one of those funny things, especially in the brotherhood type like the SEALs. You've got friends who will always kind of take the mick out of you and probably say, oh, don't, maybe not so supportive, because that's kind of the humor that's there. Tom, I'm interested, as someone working with James, who's written 10 books or 9 books at the point where you were speaking about writing this. What kind of lessons did you learn as a writer from someone with that sort of experience?
Well, I'm wildly humbled by the skill and frankly the genius of the way that James is able to craft a story. And I still have a hard time understanding how we came up with, for example, the book is written in a non-linear format. So to me, that's the coolest damn thing that you could really ever come up with. Now, I'm sure that I could have done that and written it, but it would have made very little sense. And I don't know if I could have ever tied it all back together. Right. So so when I look at the story and I read it, and as we built the whole story and the timeline, there were so many times where I had to go back and just kind of understand, how does this actually fit together? And of course it does. And if it seamlessly fits together at the end of the book, and we tell 8 or 9 different timelines and storylines all come back together, it's remarkable, right? So, some of our favorite movies, like for my, it is like the Pulp Fiction type of Quentin Tarantino writing style. And so we tell these crazy stories, and we go back into Declan's childhood, and then it ties together with the current situation. So So of course, right, I'm in awe as we did this whole project. And so I got to experience, watching an experienced writer and craftsman create this story. So that was a beautiful thing. And I as far as actual things that I learned from him was, he just writes an enormous amount and writes so damn much. It's like the dedication that he has to writing is, it's unmatched by me. I could never find the time, the energy, the space that, and somehow he's able to just, when we come up with a new idea, he's like, sometimes by the end of the day, he has 3,000 words he's sending back to me on something we talked about 6 hours ago, right? And he's asking me for my opinion on it. So it's just, I guess his dedication and is really amazing.
So James, I'm really interested, obviously, from your point of view, somebody who's written plenty of books on your own. What did you learn from this experience, and what was it like, obviously, writing a book with somebody else instead of doing it on your own?
Good question. I was a little concerned about, collaborating, especially when the protagonist is based on my collaborator's experiences. So I'm writing literally about things that he lived. And then I kept, since I never had a writing partner before, I kept envisioning, well, what if he hates what I'm sending him? Or what if I'm not nailing this character, or if I'm not even close? But we didn't, that just wasn't part of the process. It worked great. I was actually a lot of fun having a writing partner. And, it gave me more freedom, actually, because you get immediate feedback like, hey, this sequence is great, but this, we should change and do this. And, you don't get that when you look at it yourself and you go, oh, yeah, everything's great. So, when I write a book on my own, I'll write 8 hours and come back the next day and, reread it. And I might have goosebumps rereading it. I think it's so good. Or I might erase the whole thing.
Yeah.
But now I've got somebody to tell me, yay, this is good. Let's work on this. It was kind of seamless, to be honest with you. And we didn't know going in.
So take us into sort of the day-to-day in terms of what it's like to collaborate. Obviously, you said, Tom mentioned about sending 3,000 words, and you've mentioned obviously about him commenting on it. But what was the sort of did you have an initial phase where you sat down and you mapped out the whole novel, or did it just happen organically over time that you just started and then it started to snowball?
Well, it started with, sitting down together at Tom's house for 30 or 40 hours of taped interviews. Then I went back and outlined what I thought at the time was the storyline. And then, then it was a series of kind of assignments. I would tell Tom or ask Tom to give me 3,000 words on his first week at Buds, or 3,000 words on training for his first fight, first experience in combat, first few days at a Big Ten college football camp. And then I would take that and adapt it to a chapter that I was working on, and then send it back to Tom. And then we, review it together and, hey, this is great, make some changes. And that's pretty much how the whole book went.
I just want to ask a question about the fact that it's planned for a 3-book series. Tom, were there situations that you thought, I'd love to put this in the book, but you've had to hold it back because you want to then drop it in later, maybe book 2 or 3?
Oh, of course. Well, we have, we have so many stories. We have a whole book worth of material probably already written that did not go into this book.
We had to shorten this book by a couple hundred pages.
Yeah, we were 600 plus pages long to start. And so we're down to about 350 or so. So we virtually have another book already panned out. I thought the 600 pager was the book personally, but it appears people don't read 600 pages anymore. Maybe they never did, but we'll just turn it into a second one. Yeah, we have so many great stories. I think that's a really a beauty of James and I working together. Is seemingly on the surface we might have some differences, but when you get down to it, we're actually quite similar in a lot of ways. Trying to decipher how we're going to, create these characters wasn't actually all that difficult.
Did you find at any point that obviously the more you write together, that your voices started to merge into one? Or was it very much like, if I was to pick this up, could I see, oh, James wrote this bit, Tom is definitely writing this bit? Because I've read books before that are like collaborations, like Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett is one that I can remember. And I think I can go, oh, that's Gaiman and that's Pratchett. Would readers be able to do that with your book, or do you think you've found a sort of sweet spot?
I don't think you can read Breachers and know it's my my writing and Tom's writing, but
Mm.
that's my opinion.
It's hard to say. I when I read it, I can of course tell. You'll just know wherever the writing's really good, it's probably James. In my defense, though, I'm learning and I'm getting better, and it certainly is far more of a process. Writing well is far more of a process that takes time, and there's a real evolution to it. But yeah, James' writing is just fantastic. So,
Tom, do you think that you're going to get the bug for writing after the series? Do you think it's something you're going to kick on to and do more of?
I think so. Yeah, I'd love to continue my writing. Yeah, I've got a bunch of ideas that I'm starting to work on. So,
yeah.
And with then, obviously, you mentioned about the character going to the FBI. What was that appealed to you guys in terms of? Obviously, you said before, Tom, that it's not something you've done personally, but what was the decision sort of in your mind to go, oh, we're going to take the character in this direction, because that will be interesting for the reader, rather than obviously what you've already experienced yourself, which is probably just as interesting.
I think, the FBI was a real option for me. There were several opportunities for. I mean, it's not an unreasonable next step for an ex-Special Forces guy or SEAL to find his way into the FBI. So that was something that I was really looking into in those few years as I was wrapping up my time with the Navy and figuring out what I would, where was I going to land after I was finished in the Navy and my time at Northwestern was done. So I looked at the FBI. I spoke with the FBI. It was a real consideration at the time. And then as far as how, reasons why we thought that would be a great inclusion in the story is the FBI is responsible for crimes against kids, domestically. That's who would be called. That's if you were Declan Novak and you felt that it was your call to protect kids in these environments, that's probably where he would go next. Where can he make the most impact is how Declan would most likely had looked at that. I know that there's a need for this and I feel the call to it. I don't want to do it because I have a family and a whole life and I would rather just live a peaceful life on a farm somewhere, but that's not how it works for old Declan Novak. So he ends up in the FBI. The book one finishes with Declan beginning to kind of see some of the cracks in the bureaucratic FBI system. And so that is the segue into Declan's next journey, which, he won't quite be involved with the FBI in the same sort of fashion. He finds a fine group of highly effective men to work with outside of the FBI, starting book 2. Well, shortly into book 2. So
nice.
Yeah,
sounds great.
Yes.
I'm interested in the process then, Tom. We've talked about all your experiences and how they've influenced the book and how the stories are telling parts of the book. What was the process like for you to translate it from sort of memory into the hands of James to create the stories? How was that process? And if someone who has life experience that they might want to put into words, what tips might you have for them through that process?
Well, I began my writing. I re-began my writing journey 15-ish years ago, and it was just in journal form. So I'd always done some writing as a youngster and lots of reading. And I'd always wanted to really journal my life because I felt like it was a fun, interesting life that I was living already. But it took a long time for me to finally pick up the pen and decide this is in fact important that I do this. So I started writing, and it was many pages of very cringe-worthy, introspective thing. Actually, I look back at some of the first ones, and the journals were like, so I woke up today, something that was very benign stuff. And it's, but that's how I had to start. And eventually it becomes just very introspective. And you get to explore your own psychology, your own mind. You get to explore your relationships through writing in your own journals. And so you just kind of develop the ability to put your thoughts into words and then onto pieces of paper. And it did take a long time to feel comfortable with sharing any of these things outside, really outside of myself.
Yeah.
And James, I felt most comfortable. I guess I never felt as comfortable to share these things with anybody besides James. But I would highly recommend. I highly recommend anybody that is that it's also a very cathartic and therapeutic experience as well. And I would highly recommend that anybody that's dealing with difficult life situations, trauma, that putting this stuff down is the very first next step that you can very easily take to healing that stuff, to letting it go, to processing, and eventually walking away from whatever that is, to live, and enjoy the life. And really, you can tell the story that way. Someday you can help many others, perhaps.
This might be a bit of a deep question, but is it the case that it's now on the page and in the story? Do you feel like that is something you've now kind of moved on from, and it's literally a chapter that you can leave behind?
Oh yeah, of course, yes. You don't have to put it on paper, I don't think, to write the chapter and leave it behind, but it certainly is another way, and it does help. It does help.
So one of the things that we always do on the show is we have a section called What's the Story? We've not been doing videos because we've enjoyed the conversation so much. But if you had to give us an elevator pitch for this novel, what is your elevator pitch, and what can readers expect?
An elevator pitch for the novel? I think it's a story where the audience is so varied that it hits home for people that always look at things and think they can't do them. Oh God, I wish I could do that, or I envy that person, he can do that or she can do that, or whether it's writing, whether it's an athletic event, whether it's whatever it may be. This novel, more than anything, says, hey, dreams are not illusions. They're things to reach out for, and you can get there. Not everybody does, but it's certainly worth the effort. It's not, it's not our successes that we regret in life. It's not doing things that we regret.
So on that topic, then, obviously it's very inspirational. But let's say somebody was a bit cynical and they said, "Yeah, well, it's easy for you to just say because you've done it." What would you say to that person in terms of like motivation and getting them to see past their own sort of cage, if you like, that they've put themselves in? What would your advice, both of you, be to that type of person?
Tom?
So the first thing that I got to do is I got to see how powerful that person is. And as soon as you can see how absolutely amazing that human being is, that gives them permission to see how amazing they are, and that there is nothing that they can't do. There's nothing that stands in their way. They have the ability to see, to know, and to go anywhere they want. And as long as I can see it, as long as one other person can see it, they now know that it's a real thing. The problem is that nobody can see it for themselves. They cannot see the possibility of those dreams coming true. Most people can't even see the dream itself, let alone imagining that someday they may actually accomplish it. So we have to look at them and know that they have that ability, they have that power, they have the strength. They already are exactly the thing that they think they want to do. And as soon as we do that and we look at them and you put your arm around their shoulder, they already know it's possible.
I think one thing that knowing Tom has taught me, that once you get to that stage where you can see that dream and see yourself there, nobody can make you quit. You know, you just, it doesn't matter who's telling you how hard that's going to be or that you can't do it. Once you see yourself there, they can't make you quit.
We've had a lot of people on the show that have had a dream, achieved their dream, and then suffered mentally because they've done it. That's the thing they wanted to do. You know, they wanted to publish a book, or they wanted to, you know, I remember listening to an interview with Tyson Fury, and he said the same thing. He won the world championship. He became the best heavyweight boxer in the world. And then he just hit a wall of depression and was just like, bang, straight to the floor. So I suppose my question in that is, what advice would you give to somebody for building the next dream?
Well, good question.
Let me take this one. So we actually have chapter 13 in Breacher's Playbook. Declan is now out of the Navy, and he's done with football. He tore his ACL, so his football career ends, and he's struggling to understand what's next in his life. For Declan, he decides I've got to give up all the things that I think are standing in my way or causing me to feel this depression, and so he lets go of everything that he thinks makes him who he is, that defines him, that gives him a sense of validation, and he rebuilds himself from the very bottom back up. I know it doesn't sound fantastic, and everyone wants to hear a real quick fix. This is how you go from being on top of the world to, well, people don't care so much about you anymore. What have you done for me lately? And how do I recreate myself? And I don't believe that there is a real quick, simple fix, right? How quickly and how easily your fix is as quick as you can let go of identifying with whatever that glory was that you once felt. And until you can do that, I don't know that the next vision, the next dream, the next goal will ever really come into focus.
Interestingly, Chris, I heard Robbie Williams, the musician, on the radio today, and he was basically talking about that exact thing. How he basically topped all the charts, did everything he wanted to dream of, and then did exactly that, hit the wall of depression. Where do I go next? And he's talking about how basically, I'm sure this was through therapy, he looked at his whole life as a journey and chapters as opposed to the goals that are coming. And that made him really appreciate what he had done and be able to move on rather than thinking, what the hell's next, you know? So I think that's really good advice, to look at your life in that kind of respect.
And real quickly with that in mind, so I'm attempting to become a writer, which is quite different from being a Navy SEAL fighting football player. So, right. So to to understand and accept that I'm just not going to be defined the same way that I once was, or others won't define me in the same way, nor do I have to identify myself the same way that I always had. And then allow my other skills, my other talents to show, because I think we all have them, even though we played on our strengths in order to get to where we are today. There's a lot of other stuff that's kind of in the shadows, has been buried, that if we allow it, we can flourish in different ways too, which is fun, really, to see your life and to see, your entire story kind of broaden. It's fun after the fact once you allow it to happen, but it is terrifyingly, scary that, hey, I'm going to give up on these things that worked so well for me for so long. And now here I'm going to attempt to move into a new territory where it may not go as well, right?
It's about knowing your identity at that point as well, and your purpose. And I think coming out of, say, the military, or even your cage fighting or the NFL, it's like that's who you are. So stepping into that next journey for anybody going through a transition, it's about getting hold of what you want to be, what your direction is, and who you are, and then progressing forward without worrying about too much what's next, I think. But yes, Chris, we could ask you some staple questions, or we've got a couple of questions in the chat.
Yeah, we've got a few questions in the chat. Obviously, we've got about 8 minutes left. So if you're listening and watching this live and you've got a question, send it in now and we'll get to asking some of them. We'll ask some of the ones that are in the chat before we ask some staple ones. So this one is from Linda. She says, were there events/subject matter that you hesitated to address? If so, how did you go about that with the collaboration? Great question.
I think that's probably directed at Tom's end.
Sure. It was like we talked about a bit. It was important that I was careful with anything that was sensitive, both with the military, with my comrades. I mean, there was a lot going on at Northwestern football, and there were some things that were happening with unionizations, which I got to be right in the middle of at Northwestern. There were some other scandals that took place. There's a lot of things that took place, obviously, throughout our lives, that I think it was important that we were really cautious about how we portrayed it. And again, even though we can't necessarily speak specifics about things, the beauty of a fiction story, again, this is what I think is really fantastic about us, is that we still can tell the story, and you'll still get access to some of these characters, these psychologies, the dynamics, just in some different ways. So it's kind of a fun thing that James and I were able to collaborate on. How are we going to tell these stories, right? But to also protect everyone that we possibly can. So. Yeah, that's, I think, how it went. It was pretty cool to do that too.
Yeah.
Got another question here in the chat. What would be the ideal place for a writing retreat? And obviously that's directed to both of you.
Well, I always thought writing was the job, assuming that we have to have jobs. Writing, you get to work for yourself, you get to be creative every day, you can go wherever you want, you don't have a boss, you don't have any employees. That's the perfect job. And for me, the perfect place to do it is, oh my God, it's, in the mountains. Colorado, Arizona, places where I luckily had great access to, is the perfect place to write.
Yeah, nice.
Yep, agreed. The mountains. I find I'm super creative at airports and on airplanes. Strangely, that's another one, but the mountains is the place.
Amazing.
Just had another question, Chris. Come in if you're asked that.
Aside from the genre you write in now, what is another genre that piques your interest? And that is a great question. Thank you, Linda.
We were talking about this yesterday. Romance novels.
Ooh. Didn't expect that one.
That was something I've been kicking that one around for a little while. Romance novels.
We decided yesterday, why not? Let's fucking do it. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Hey, that's all fine on this show. What kind of level of romance are we talking here? I've got a little mischievous feeling that it's not just the standard meeting at a bar.
I'm not sure we've gotten to that detail yet, but
that's gonna be. I don't know if I want that email from you.
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
does this
Tom,
sound all right to you, Tom?
Hey, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
Hey,
Tom, will you
that's
prove
not how
this
Declan
chapter?
would
And
do it.
you're like, no, I don't want to read this.
Let me tell you how Declan would do this.
Remove my name from that
romance
manuscript
novels. I thought that would be fun. There's a thriller romance novel genre, so I think that could be that would be fun and interesting to do. And then I also like youth adventure stories. So I've got a passion for writing, kind of a, my generation of Hardy Boys style series about a young Declan Novak and, his teenage pursuits. So
amazing.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, Nicholas Sparks, he makes an awful lot of money, so maybe try the romance. Could be good. One of our staple questions then that we have on the show is, if you could take any character from fiction and make that character your own, which character would you choose and what would you do with them?
Any character from fiction.
You stumped them on that one, Chris, I think.
Well, I don't know. I heard you talking earlier about.
I think perhaps say if you could add one fictional character into the Breachers Playbook.
Oh, the Breachers Playbook. Yeah, that would be great. Okay. I was going to use an anime character. Was going to be my. Okay. Gosh, what a question.
You can pass on that if you want. If you want to come back to us, maybe drop us.
Yeah, well, let's come back to it. James, do you have one?
I was just mentioning they touched on Charlie Hunnam in the beginning of the show, and I was a huge Sons of Anarchy fan, and the writing in that show was perfect, and Jax, the way he related to his father's writing, I loved it.
Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
I think I'd say real quick, I do. If you're familiar with the show with Dean and Sam Winchester, it is. Well, we'll get back to it. I'll remember it.
Yeah. No worries. I'm conscious of the time, you guys. We've got a couple of minutes, and I want to sneak a question in here, which is about the cover. It looks fantastic. How much design did you guys put into that, and why choose that one over perhaps other options you had?
That's interesting, because the publisher, was tactical16.com. In my past experiences with covers being designed by publishers, most of them sucked in the beginning, and you had to go back and forth forever to get it right. And we gave Tactical 16 some general parameters to look at for the cover, and when they sent me the first proof, they nailed it. I mean, nice. You're looking at the first proof.
Yeah, that's the first take.
I opened this email and I was like, "Holy shit!" I loved it. Yeah, they did a great job.
That's why I asked, because it's fantastic. Yeah.
I wish I could take more credit for it, but they did great.
And
So-
another. Oh, go on,
I was
Chris.
going to say, before we go, where can people buy the book, and where can people follow you on social media and all that good stuff?
The book is available at tactical16.com, Amazon. You can follow Tom Hruby, seal.com. Get it there. You can follow James Pomerantz, writer.com. At Pomerantz James on Instagram. What's your Instagram, Tom?
TT Ruby 33.
Yeah,
And
plenty
for
of
those
places.
who are not seeing the name, it's a silent H in front of Ruby.
7H TTHRUBY.
We'll stick some links in the descriptions once we post this up. So to have a look there as well, and that'll make it a bit easy for you guys to click on it.
Thanks.
Thanks.
And sorry.
And that show is Supernatural. Somebody got it.
Yeah, they did. They put that in the comments. So thank you for that, Linda. One question. I know we're just shooting over time slightly, but if you could cast any actor to play your MC in a movie, if this was adapted, who would you pick?
Tom Hardy.
Nice.
Perfect.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Taylor Kitsch would work too.
Nice. Yes.
Ooh.
Okay, brilliant. Right, Tom and James, thank you so much for being on the show with us and sharing your story. I'm sure there's so much more we could have talked about, and I hope, James, you have a great golf round straight after this. But everybody watching, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're listening back and watching this back, please leave us some comments, drop us some comments, and if you've got any messages for these two, we can surely send it through email to them afterwards.
One message, besides thank you for having us on. We've done a lot of podcasts. This one was awesome.
Well, thank you so much. You guys were great.
Thanks.
So everybody, please stay safe and click those links, buy the book, more importantly, and we will see you next week. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.